We're back. We're back. We were gone, and now we're back. And we weren't even gone for like legal reasons. We were just gone because they said, "Oh, we're not having shows last week." And so, all these people were emailing me, and it was like, no, I'm not dead. I'm not dead. I swear. But anyway, we're back. So welcome to the news for the week of 28 June 2020. TikTok bans. Oz increases cybersecurity budgets. The U.S. Senate wants the Justice Department to read all your mail. The top 10 bug bounties and BlueLeaks. All this, Jason Wood returns as well on Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. As technology continues to evolve and expand, so have the countless ways our critical systems can be put in jeopardy. Ransomware attacks, misconfiguration, user error, and malicious threat actors, to name a few. As IT infrastructures continue to grow and diversify, how do you ensure stable security? Core Security, a help systems company, provides an analytics-driven, layered approach to security with a portfolio that enables both proactive and reactive responses. With Core Security, you can reduce risk by limiting access, detect upcoming and active threats, test for security weaknesses, and efficiently monitor data for actionable insights. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/core security.
All right, so news it is. I put this first story on there because I wanted to remind you that all your users are now connecting to your systems remotely. So a lot of times we see these things pop up. And this morning I got a pop-up from MSISEC, and it was a list of just about every Netgear device popped up on MSISEC. And this is the CVE was actually old, or the notice from Netgear was a little bit older. But I get this notice, and it's a vulnerability list with a large number of Netgear products that can result in remote code executions, denial of service, et cetera, if they aren't patched. So why did I put this in here? Most of us aren't running Netgear devices in the enterprise, but if your users are running Netgear devices at home and they're connecting to your enterprise, these things become actually part of your problem. So it's a good idea to check out things even if they're a little bit outside your realm, because you've got all these home users now, and they're probably not going away anytime soon. I mean, I hate to tell you, but we're never getting back. The genie is not going back in that bottle. I don't care how bad we want it to. We're not going back to the old world of everybody working in a little office somewhere and driving in every day. I'm telling you, just wait and see. Weaponizing TikTok. Well, that was how I put it. Well, after a recent border clash with China, India banned the use of more than 59 to be exact, Chinese-based apps, which included TikTok, WeChat, Weibo, and Clash of Kings. It's a game. I've never played it, but yeah, asking for a friend. But a whole pile of apps that belong to China. And to me, it looks like the response is political in nature rather than having somebody saying, well, these apps have some kind of inherent security risk to the country of India. It has a huge impact on the Chinese companies who make the apps, because India, if you aren't aware, has quite a few people living there. TikTok has over 120 million users in India, so this may actually be a thing going forward. Is like, okay, well, this is kind of like the modern equivalent of economic sanctions, like where you say, well, we're going to put a tax on all your goods. India just says, look, we're going to ban all your apps, and that could actually be noticeable. So, that little border dispute, Australia then announced that it would spend an additional $1 billion on cybersecurity this year, which would increase their budget by about 10%, which is not, the headlines like, massive increase, but it was really just 10%. But they did increase it. And the reason they said they were doing this was due to state-sponsored attacks on various components of the Australian government, which included the parliament, the political parties, and the universities. Boy, this all sounds awfully familiar. But Australia had gotten Beijing upset earlier this year because they had some discussion and some politicians tweeting and all the kind of stuff that we're all very comfortable with, or at least familiar with now, about the origin of the coronavirus. And they accused Beijing of the attacks. China has, of course, denied these accusations and then turned around and made announcements in China that tourists should stay well away from Australia, and they imposed some trade sanctions. And I think they made some nasty remarks about Joff Thayer. I'm not sure exactly, but there was something like that. I think if you translate the Chinese literally, I think it says something about Joff Thayer, but I'll leave that to you to decide. Speaking of politics, then, the United States Senate has produced another anti-encryption bill, which is apparently worse than the Earn It bill. Now, if you don't know about the Earn It bill, you probably should, but the Earn It bill was a plan which would allow the Attorney General's office and some shady commissions to strip all sorts of protections from websites that do not follow their best practice lists that was determined by the government commission. What could possibly go wrong with that? So if they did that, they could literally say you can't use end-to-end encryption or whatever else the AG decides should be on this bad behavior list. It's very Chinese sounding again. It's really hard to imagine any political bias in this. Yeah, no way that's going to come up. But this new one, so that was the Earn It bill. The new one is called the Lawful Access to Encrypted Data Act. I think there should be a law against naming bills things that sound bad if you vote against them. But the Lawful Access Bill, which was introduced in the Senate, I don't know how it can be lawful if it's actually not a law yet, but whatever. This new one gives the Justice Department the ability to require manufacturers of encrypted devices, operating systems, telcos, pretty much anyone they determine. There's no pesky commission in this bill either. It just all goes back to the Attorney General's office. And they require them to decrypt data at the request of the Attorney General. So what that means is that the Attorney General can literally write their own warrants and tell you have to decrypt data that's on your systems. So it means no one was really clear that if it went beyond like if it was on the operating system and you encrypted it, could they also force them to decrypt that as well? And if they say, well, they can't, then I don't know what the penalty. It was really one of those far-reaching, overreaching kind of things. But the bill also then establishes a prize for secure backdoors, and they pay researchers who find ways to break encryption and turn it over to the police. So this is kind of like I don't know what to call this. But anyway, as we've seen before, these are usually, just fool's errands, maybe fool's errands on top of fool's errands, a la the, say, Clipper chip debacle. But it's very 1984 type of action kind of stuff. So if the point-to-point and the end-to-end encryption is controlled by the government and you use some sort of secondary encryption, in theory anyway, the telco could be held responsible for breaking all that and providing it to the government if they request it for whatever reason they want. No way this gets used politically. Not a chance. This is not good for anyone, I assure you. Either side, it doesn't matter. If your side thinks it's great right now, they won't think it's great the time the other side has control. HackerOne, which is kind of the Tinder of bug bounties and matching people up, announced its list of top bounties paid on the annual list. So a top 10 countdown for that. At number 10, Airbnb paid out more than $944,000. This is all U.S. dollars with a top bounty of $15,000. Number 9 was Valve, who paid out more than $951,000 and a top bounty of $20,000. At number 8, GitHub paid more than $987,000 with $25,000 as a top award. Number 7, Mail.ru, Russian internet provider. They paid out $1.1 million with a top bounty of $20K. GitLab was at number 6 with $1.2 million and $20,000 as the top, but this isn't as interesting as I thought it was going to be. And the top 5, so here's the top, I will read the top 5. I should have just done 5. Twitter was the number 5, paying more than $1.29 million and a top bounty of $20,000, very precise bounty here, $20,160. At number 4, Intel, who paid more than $1.9 million in bug bounties. Number 3 is Uber, who paid more than $2.4 million. I keep saying more than because they put greater than signs on the table. And a top bounty of $50K from Intel. And the top two, at number 2, PayPal, with $2.79 million paid out and a top bounty of $30,000. And at number 1 with a bullet, wow, Verizon with $9.4 million paid out in bug bounties and a top bounty of $70,000. They thanked 1,315 hackers with 5,928 resolved reports. Wow. So that's an interesting report. You do have to put in some information to get it, but it's not a paywall, so if you want to read it, feel free. Alekseyevich Birkhoff was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison in the United States. Birkhoff was arrested at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel, which is a very nice airport, and Israel refused to return him to Russia. Ultimately, he ended up extradited to the United States, which is a rarity anyway, and there was years of finagling between the United States and Israel and Russia, and on and on and on. If you don't know, Mr. Birkhoff was convicted of running Card Planet and Direct Connection. Card Planet was a carding site, and carding, you probably know, but I'll just for everybody that maybe doesn't know, they sell credit card and debit card numbers so that you can print your own cards. So this is a big industry, illegal industry, where they sell these things. So they steal a card number and they sell them for $2 to $60 per number, depending on what kind of credit card, which country it was issued by, and so and how good it is and whatever. But it was another one of those sites where they have a money back guarantee on there. Like if the number we sold you doesn't work, we'll give you another number. We'll give you 2 more numbers for free and 7 on Friday. Direct Connection was also reportedly a hangout for elite cyber criminals and exchange of malware goods and so forth. A lot of carding on Direct Connection as well because they sold malware. They offered the service for developing malware. But it's a rare case when someone is actually caught, extradition actually happened, prosecution actually happened, and they actually got jail time. Okay. A huge leak online was called BlueLeaks, was put out on the interweb last week. This is the latest from a group called the Distributed Denial of Secrets Group, a great name, and consisted of 270 gigs of data from various U.S. police departments. The claim was this was 10 years worth of data from over 200 different police, fusion, and other law enforcement centers. Krebs on Security confirmed the data with the National Fusion Center Association, and it does include emails, bank accounts, all sorts of OSINT info. There's a huge list of all the different kinds of things that were included because police collect all sorts of information. Apparently, the leak was caused by NetCential, not to be confused with NetSentinel, but NetCential, who provides web services to law enforcement. The compromise was caused by a compromised customer account, and the upload feature allowed them to push malicious content onto the website, which allowed for a massive exfiltration of this fusion center. When we return, the hottest hacker in the desert, and once by accident called Rhett. We'll talk about auctioning off your data online. We call him Jason Wood, and he is back, so stick around.
The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM.
Yay, we're back, and Jason is going to join us now to talk about Revel Ransomware Gang and their auction features on their site. I just love how these sites are evolving into like a whole industry. Pretty soon it'll be like marketing and media consultants for, like getting pop-up ads and whatever. Hi, Jason.
Hey, Doug. Good to be back with you and everybody else.
We missed everybody. We missed you. You've been away for a few weeks, and
I've been hiding out, waiting for my chance to come back. And you know what? We get to come back with one that I find to be interesting to me and a little funny. Funny because, we're talking about Pinchy Spider, as they're affectionately known, and I like saying Pinchy Spider.
I love that name.
Yeah, it makes me laugh pretty much every time I see it. But they are an interesting group. So one of the things I do with work is I deal with a lot of what we call e-crime type of activity, and you see a lot of intrusions due to that. And it's been interesting to me to read and watch how these operations are evolving and how they're taking existing business models that we would think of, for legitimate type of organizations and applying it to what they do, which is like very illegal. So it's not like they're inventing something new, but just how they're using it is kind of interesting. And the latest one here is an evolution in Pinchy Spider's ransomware as a service operation that allows them to, gives them another venue to make money. So they started off on offering their ransomware as a service, affectionately known as REvil, or Soda Kenobi. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I can never pronounce it. Anyhow, that's their ransomware that they run, and they provide all the infrastructure to people who want to deploy this ransomware, and they take a cut of each ransom. Well, people stopped or slowing down on paying, so they said, okay, well, how are we going to make some money on this? Let's we'll tell the people that if they don't give us the ransom, we'll release their data publicly, and so they started doing that. And maybe that didn't work as well as they hoped or something or other. Now they've decided to move into auctioning data off to other third parties, who weren't involved in the breach, to see if they're interested. So now that they have the ransom and now the auction that goes into this as well. So about a month ago is when Pinchy released this new innovation, in quotes, to earn out some money from their intrusions conducted on their platform. And what they're doing now is, they're looking at some of this data that they're picking up, and they'll call it big game hunting where I work, going for important data to the organization, not just locking up whichever system they can get onto. They steal this data as part of their ransom operation. Theoretically, I guess, to say, hey, we could release it publicly, and then somebody said, hey, let's just auction it off. So how does this work? Well, according to the threat post article in the show notes, Pinchy basically puts the data up for auction with a minimum bid and kind of what our eBay-like buy now button, except it's a blitz price is what they call it, to buy the data. And the amount of money that the data goes for varies depending on what it is. If I'm a buyer and I decide that I want to buy this data and I've got loads of money to steal it, or loads of money to spend on it, I go to their Tor site and I solve a CAPTCHA, and it gives me a set of one-time credentials to access the auction house. And the site looks, actually, I saw some screenshots I saw look very. It's not very fancy. It doesn't look very pretty, but it works. And you get a Monero wallet address to send money to. To place a bid, let's say if I'm going to bid on the minimum, right? I'm going to go place a bid. I've got to go put 10% of my bid amount in that Monero wallet. So if, for example, a minimum bid was $50,000 in Monero cryptocurrency, I need to put in $5,000 to show that I'm serious about making this bid. That gets rid of fraudulent bidders and stuff like that, which I'm looking at going, all right, let me see. So I need to give a criminal group access to 10% of my bid, and I'm going to hope that I get it back if I get outbid, because supposedly that's coming back to me when that happens. Yeah, I don't think I feel real comfortable with that. But the auction continues just like an eBay auction or any other auction site. Goes for a period of time. Whoever has the highest bid at the end of the period, or whoever put in the blitz price, get the data, assuming that they deliver the rest of the other 90% of their bid, right? So what kind of money are we talking about here? I mean, how big is the payout for these operators? This varies. And so I just gave a couple examples here. It depends on the data being stolen. According to Threat Post, here are the examples they list. 50 gigabytes of data from a U.S. law firm that include some kind of employee or client confidential data. All right. We don't know what's in there. It may or may not be interesting. Data bidding starts at $30,000. Blitz price $50,000. So it's a fairly good chunk of change there, but it can go up. $1.2 billion or goodness gracious, 1.2 terabytes of data, not $1 billion, sorry. Terabytes of data from an intellectual property law firm that has all kinds of patent information, intellectual property that, for secret sauce for companies and whatnot, that is more valuable. And in an auction's case, the starting price was $1 million and the blitz price was $10 million. Now, one of the things I look at this, obviously this is a fairly select group of buyers. I mean, who can use that kind of data and have it be worth, a couple million or $10 million dollars. You have to be in some kind of position to actually use this data in some way that is going to benefit your organization. If you're looking at making money off it, it has to be that valuable to you. If you're a nation state, it has to further whatever goals you have, enough to be worth it to you. And obviously wherever this is going to be used, there are no protections for intellectual property rights and stuff like that for Western countries. There's not going to be enforcement at all. Kind of narrows down the places in the world that this can occur in. So, obviously the business model that Pinchy has decided to use is not new by any stretch. The idea of running an auction, eBay's been around for a really long time, and they're just kind of applying that to this. But the application of that to this environment, to me, is really interesting. It's really wild to watch how the e-crime groups are going out and trying to find any way that they can to increase their earnings. And the blog post doesn't say this, but one of the questions I had was, are the victims paying the ransom to get their data de-encrypted so they get it back? But because the Pinchy group has already stolen the data, are they turning around and then auctioning it off as well? That way they get the payment for the ransom and the payment for the data on the sale side. They're a criminal group, and there's not like anybody can go. You can go to law enforcement and complain that it wasn't fair that you paid the ransom and then they sold your data, but there's really not much they're going to be able to do about it, unless, of course, you are, what was this guy, Birkhoff, who shows up in a allied nation and gets picked up by the police and extradited to the U.S. eventually. So it's one of those things you got to keep in mind, I guess, if you're in this business. But still, if you're hanging out in, let's say, Russia, who doesn't have an extradition agreement, you can feel kind of safe as long as you don't travel abroad too much. Either way, these crooks are not going to lose any sleep over stealing on both ends of this. If this is your kind of article and something you're interested in, go ahead and check it out in the show notes. It's actually got a link to the vendor as well that you have to register for to get their report, which I didn't bother with because I didn't want to give them my information. But the Threat Post article has some pretty good data in it. Go check it out and enjoy. It's kind of fun read.
Thank you, Jason. The sad part for me is that in my head, all those auctions are like these evil Sotheby's auctions in Macau or something where James Bond is in the audience posing as James Stock, and then they're like, $1 million from Mr. Schiffer, and Bond is like, hey, Money Penny, how much is left in the account, kind of thing, and everybody's got on dinner jack. So now it's just like a bunch of, sweaty people on an anonymous site. But it's really, they should do that. They should have like an evil auction house somewhere.
Yeah, I got to say, the auction site does not look that sexy.
Yeah, we should. That's our next venture.
HTML.
It's going to be called JD Evil Auction House, and we'll open it in Macau or somewhere. So we can invite people to come and have that kind of an auction.
We'll have to move out of where we're at because that could badly burn us.
Well, I guess, yeah, maybe. Who knows where we're at anyway? All right, thanks, Jason. Pinchy Spider, I love it. Chicken Melon was another one I saw yesterday I liked a lot. So, and finally, sad news. Segway 9bot announced last week that they would suspend production of Segway PTs. The ubiquitous devices were originally supposed to change the whole world. And by now, we were all supposedly going to be wearing spandex bodysuits and riding around instead of driving cars, and there would be no more sidewalks because all of us would be in our, body conforming clothes, and it would be awesome in this flying car less future because we all have Segways. But that was how I envisioned it in 2001 when they first introduced the thing. And when I first thought, I thought that's a pretty cool thing. And it really put me in the Nerd Hall of Fame forever when I saw that and went, wow, that looks cool. And then I saw that it cost $6,000, and I realized, well, yeah, I'll never have one. And then, it didn't seem as cool then. And then along with everyone else, and except for the tourists and the mall cops, and not to mention some early software problems which slammed people face first into the ground, it never really caught on. I did ride one around the desert in Arizona, and I rode one in Poland, and it was actually fun, and it seemed kind of cool, even though it's probably not. But that's it for the PT. Segway said that it represented less than 1.5% of their sales, and they wanted to focus on hipster scooter type things that they were making, little two-wheel scooters and all those instead. So sorry, Segway. Alas, we never knew you. And those spandex bodysuits, I was really counting on that, but I guess I'll just have to keep mine in the closet for now. And that's the news in the time of plague. I'm Doug White. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Security Weekly News. And we'll see you on Friday with the Security Weekly News wrap-up.